Hello, I'm Margaret Gilbert from Corporate Contracts. I'm the Director of Corporate Contracts. I'm an international consultant and trainer in the area of procurement and contracts. I'm also asked to speak at international procurement conferences, and I'm also the author of the Contract Matters books, which there is a series which can be found on my website.
Margaret, we've talked about the procurement principles before.
Yes.
So I wonder whether it's worthwhile us going through that. So let's start with the transparency one.
Okay. So the most important procurement principle is transparency, and the need to make sure that the procurement process is done in a transparent way. So, and that basically means is that it has to be done in an ethical way, and that there is no possibility of corrupt or fraudulent behaviour.
So I would, when you say that, I would expect that if the auditors came in to look at a particular procurement issue, that they would be able to find from the beginning all the planning, all the things around that, the decision-making processes are clear, and the final awarding of the contract has been well documented.
So throughout the whole of procurement, what has to happen is that there needs to be a paper trail and documentation of how decisions are made, and that's another way of making sure that it's procurement is undertaken in a transparent way.
Right. So the next one here is accountability. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure. It is time that there was accountability of people who undertake procurement to make sure that it is done in a transparent way, and if it isn't, that there's accountability for their actions if they have sort of crossed the line in terms of unethical behaviour. So accountability is important, otherwise you get corrupt behaviour or unethical behaviour, and if nothing is done to change that or to reference the issue around corrupt behaviour, then there will be no accountability. But you can't have one principle of transparency and another of accountability and no action taken.
So I am thinking when you speak like that the procurement people are accountable to the management or the finance department or some other group within a group of authority within the organisation that can look at the transactions and can say this is fine, this is not,
correct,
etc. So it's clear.
Yes, it's clear. And a part of making things accountable is to make sure you've got good systems and procedures, of course. We've talked about that before.
Yes, protocols and processes, etc. And policies, absolutely, yeah. So also again that procurement needs to be fit for purpose.
Yes, well of course you don't want to go and buy something that isn't going to suit. So the expression is called fit for purpose, but primarily it's making sure that what you're going to purchase and what you're going to buy and what you're going to use, it is actually going to do the job. So it's called fit for purpose.
That makes perfect sense. And where does price come into that, or is that really part of the next principle, which is things are fair and equitable?
Well, the whole procurement process has to be fair and equitable, and it has to be fair for all players, so to speak. And that means not only just from the buyer side, but also from the supplier side, and making sure that the process is done well, so it's fair for all parties who wish to participate. That's what it means by fair and equitable.
Right. And value for money? And
value for money is comes back to your price issue. But equally there's two scenarios there. Value for money, yes, in terms of price, but lowest price, which some people seem to think is okay, can come back and haunt you later. So value for money is also, you need to look at from not just the 1 year or the first year, but it should be over the term, whether it's 2-3 years of the term of the contract, and to make sure that the value for money is over the whole length of the term rather than just looking at it as in what for the first year.
Does this also include the buyer who's ultimately paying also looking at whether the process of the supplier of the goods and services is also getting some value for what they're putting out, they're spending?
Yes, because procurement should be right and done for, and should be, the final decision should be that the contract is in place that suits for both parties. So the supplier has to make a living, and that has to be recognised. And the other thing about value, using the words value, if we take out the other words, value is not necessarily could be seen. It can be
an
intangible in terms of like relationship or something like that. And so that's what also is important when it comes to procurement. So you shouldn't always consider value and money in the same sentence necessarily. It should be value as in what they can each equally bring to the relationship or to the contractual obligations. So value is more than just money.
Yes, I would think intellectual property could be in there,
Correct.
which is the creativity of the service or the goods or whatever.
Well, it also comes back to like expertise and ideas and vision and direction. All of that is helpful, but you cannot see those things, but you know it when you see it and whatever. So that is value.
Yeah. And openness and transparency kind of fit together, but they are different.
They are. It's important in any part of the procurement process is for both parties to be open, or all parties to be open, and to provide input, direction, and expertise. And so it should be an open process. Sometimes it isn't, and that's not a good thing, but mostly it is, which is great. But it does have a link to transparency.
Well, that's good. So there are 6 principles: transparency, accountability, fit for purpose, fair and equitable, value for money, and openness.
Correct.
Great.
Yep, and they should be followed. Sometimes that's mentioned and it's just like, okay, yes, we know these are the procurement principles, but the actions don't necessarily follow what the principles are. So it's just easy to sort of say, oh yes, follow the procurement principles, but you actually have to do it, and it should not be hard. But some people seem to think it's hard, so it is important to follow the procurement principles, I feel.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.